Thales of Miletus, the first philosopher. In the bustling city of Miletus, a boy named Thales was born around 624 BC. Miletus was a thriving center of trade and learning, located on the coast of what is now modern-day Turkey. Thales came from a family of Boeotian ancestry, tracing their roots to the Thalidae family, said to be descendants of the legendary hero Cadmus. From a young age, he displayed an insatiable curiosity about the world around him. Unlike other children who spent their days playing in the streets, Thales often found himself staring at the sky, wondering about the stars and the universe. As Thales grew older, his thirst for knowledge only deepened. He was particularly fascinated by the mysteries of nature and the heavens. His mother, noticing his unusual interests, once asked him if he would ever marry. Thales simply smiled and said, "It is not yet the right time." Years passed, and when his mother asked him again, he replied, "Now it is too late." One evening, as Thales walked with an elderly woman, he was so engrossed in observing the stars that he fell into a ditch. The woman laughed and said, "Thales, you cannot even see what is in front of you, and you want to understand what is in the sky." This story, later told by Diogenes Laertius, became famous as an example of how great thinkers often focus so much on the bigger picture that they miss the small details of daily life. Thales was not just a thinker, but also a target of ridicule. Many great men before and after him faced the same fate. Lucian ridiculed Pythagoras, Aristophanes mocked Socrates, and the city of Athens eventually sentenced Socrates to death. Thales understood that superior minds often made others feel inferior, which led to jealousy, hatred, and slander. But he did not let this deter him. He believed in the pursuit of wisdom and the search for truth. Thales had no formal teacher, but he sought knowledge wherever he could find it. According to Diogenes Laertius, he traveled to Egypt, where he spent time with priests who were the keepers of ancient wisdom. In those days, Egypt was a land of mystery, where knowledge was closely guarded. Only those willing to dedicate themselves fully could learn from the priests. While in Egypt, Thales studied a wide range of subjects. He learned about astronomy, geometry, arithmetic, and even mystical teachings. He spent years observing the Great Pyramids, fascinated by their size and precision. It was here that he made one of his most famous discoveries: how to measure the height of a pyramid using its shadow. By comparing the length of the shadow to his own height, he calculated the pyramid's true height. This simple but brilliant application of geometry amazed the Egyptian scholars. When Thales returned to Miletus, he was no longer a young man. He had spent all his wealth on education, but he was rich in knowledge. Instead of seeking riches or power, he dedicated himself to philosophy and science. He encouraged his students to study the mysteries, believing that only through deep contemplation could one discover truth and spiritual freedom. Thales also studied the Nile River and its seasonal floods, which greatly influenced Egyptian agriculture. He theorized that these floods were caused by winds pushing against the river's currents. While his explanation was not entirely correct, it was one of the earliest attempts to use natural reasoning rather than mythology to explain natural phenomena. Thales was among the first to apply logical reasoning to geometry. He made several significant discoveries, including in any isosceles triangle, the base angles are always equal. A circle's diameter divides it into two equal halves. Triangles inscribed in semicircles always form right angles. These principles would later influence Greek mathematics and inspire great thinkers like Pythagoras and Euclid. One of Thales' most astonishing achievements was predicting a solar eclipse. During a war between the Lydians and the Medes, the sun suddenly disappeared from the sky, plunging the battlefield into darkness. Both armies, believing it to be an omen from the gods, stopped fighting and declared peace. Historians believe that Thales' prediction was based on his studies of the movements of the sun and moon. Though he may not have fully understood the mechanics of an eclipse, his ability to foresee such an event was remarkable for his time. Thales was not just a philosopher and mathematician. He also applied his knowledge to engineering. When King Croesus of Lydia needed to cross the Halys River, Thales suggested diverting the river's course so the army could cross without building a bridge. His ingenious thinking demonstrated how scientific knowledge could solve real-world problems. Perhaps Thales' greatest contribution to philosophy and science was his insistence on seeking rational explanations for natural events. He rejected the traditional belief that gods controlled every aspect of life and instead searched for underlying principles governing nature. This approach laid the foundation for scientific thinking. Thales proposed that water was the fundamental substance of all life. He observed that water could change forms, solid as ice, liquid as water, and gas as vapor, yet it remained the same substance. While modern science has disproven this theory, his attempt to identify a single underlying element was a groundbreaking step towards scientific inquiry. Thales was also the first to observe the phenomenon of static electricity. He noticed that when amber, a fossilized tree resin, was rubbed, it attracted small objects. This was one of the earliest recorded observations of electricity, a field that would not be fully understood until thousands of years later. Despite his many contributions, Thales lived a humble life. He did not seek wealth or power, but he left behind ideas that shaped the future of philosophy, science, and mathematics. Even Aristotle, one of history's greatest thinkers, acknowledged Thales as the first true philosopher. His belief in rational thought, observation, and logical reasoning became the foundation upon which Greek philosophy and modern science were built. Thales passed away around 546 BC, leaving behind no written works but a legacy that endured for centuries. His ideas inspired countless philosophers and scientists, from Pythagoras to Newton and beyond. Though his time on Earth had ended, his influence continued to grow, shaping the way humanity understood the world. In the end, Thales of Miletus was more than just a philosopher. He was a visionary. He looked beyond the myths and superstitions of his time and sought knowledge through reason and observation. His journey, from a curious boy in Miletus to one of the greatest minds of ancient Greece, remains a testament to the power of human intellect and the pursuit of wisdom. And so, the story of Thales reminds us that true greatness lies not in wealth or power, but in the relentless search for truth.